Imagine stepping out of your house on a crisp Saturday morning, coffee mug in hand, only to find your driveway completely blocked by a giant SUV nose-out wheels, angled like it was deliberately planted there. Not just parked, but sprawled across every inch of the concrete, so I couldn't move a car, a truck, not even my tractor. And taped under the windshield wiper was a handwritten note that said, "You don't use this driveway enough, so I'm borrowing it today. Deal with it." That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with a neighborly mistake. No, this was a declaration of war. I live in Maplewood Ridge, one of those picture-perfect neighborhoods where lawns are cut with military precision and mailboxes have to match the HOA's approved shade of beige. And presiding over it all is Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She's in her late 40s, blonde curls that never seem to move, yoga pants that probably cost more than my tractor payment, and a voice sharp enough to cut glass. For months, she'd been on my case about everything: my grass being too long by an inch, my mailbox being the wrong aesthetic, and most of all, the tractor I kept in my yard. To her, that tractor was an eyesore. To me, it was my livelihood and my pride. So when I saw her SUV in my driveway blocking me in like I didn't exist, I knew this wasn't about parking. This was about power. My first instinct was to storm over to her house, pound on her door, and demand she move it. But that's what she wanted. She wanted me on her porch begging, giving her another excuse to remind me who she thought ran this place. So instead, I just stood there sipping my coffee, letting the steam rise into the morning air, and thought about something I own more than a driveway. I own a tractor, a big, roaring, earth-moving machine designed to pick up logs, rocks, even vehicles. And suddenly, the decision was made. I set my mug down on the porch rail, climbed into the cab, and fired up the engine. The sound of that diesel rumble rolled through the cul-de-sac like thunder. Curtains twitched, blinds shifted, and within seconds, I had an audience. Neighbors stepped out with phones in their hands, whispering to each other. "He's not really going to do it, is he?" Oh, but I was. Karen came storming out of her house in a silk robe, waving her arms like she was directing traffic. "Stop right there. That's a luxury vehicle. You can't touch it," she screamed, her voice cracking under the panic. I leaned out of the cab, calm as ever, and said, "You blocked my driveway, Karen. I'm just moving your SUV out of the way." Her face twisted and she spat back. "You wouldn't dare." But my hands were already gripping the wheel. The tractor's fork slid neatly under the SUV's frame, metal groaning as I lifted the front wheels off the ground. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some neighbors laughed nervously, others cheered. Karen's face went white as the hood of her precious ride tilted into the air. I paused for a second, letting everyone, especially her, see what justice looked like. Then I gave her one last chance. "Move it yourself, Karen. Last warning." Instead of swallowing her pride, she doubled down. "If you drop that car, I'll have you arrested. You'll never win against me. I am this HOA." That was all I needed to hear. With a slow push, I eased the tractor forward and tipped the SUV nose first into the ditch that runs along the side of my property. The crunch of metal, the splash of mud. It was beautiful. Her mighty SUV, the status symbol she paraded around this neighborhood, now sat tilted in the mud like a wounded animal. Karen shrieked so loud I swear car alarms 2 streets over went off. She stomped her feet, pulled at her hair, and yelled, "You'll pay for this. You'll regret the day you crossed me." But the more she screamed, the more the crowd laughed. Phones were raised high, capturing every second. One neighbor shouted, "Looks like you need a tow truck, Karen." Another yelled, "Or maybe a bigger tractor." For once the sarcasm wasn't aimed at me, it was aimed at her. Within 20 minutes the cavalry arrived. 3 members of the HOA board marched down the street in their polos and khakis, clipboards tucked under their arms like weapons. At the front was Greg, the smug board president, who loved nothing more than to puff out his chest and remind us all how grateful we should be for their rules. They surrounded Karen like bodyguards, nodding as she wailed about how I had attacked her SUV with farm equipment. Then Greg strutted over to me. "This kind of behavior is unacceptable in our community," he said. "You can't just use heavy machinery to handle disputes." I raised an eyebrow. "So blocking a homeowner's driveway is acceptable? Because that's exactly what your golden girl did. For the first time, Greg hesitated. The neighbors murmured their agreement, their eyes darting between me, the board, and the SUV still stuck in the ditch. The tide was shifting, and Karen could feel it slipping away. She screamed louder. He threatened me. He tried to kill me. He destroyed my vehicle. Her words echoed, but her car wasn't destroyed. It was stuck, sure, but not wrecked. Everyone could see that. Then the sirens came. A police cruiser rolled into the cul-de-sac, lights flashing. The crowd went silent. My chest tightened. For the first time, doubt crept in. What if I had gone too far? What if they sided with her? I pictured handcuffs, court dates, legal fees. I thought about how easy it would have been to just call a tow truck. For a moment I felt the fight drain out of me. Maybe I had messed everything up. Maybe Karen was right, I'd regret this. But then the officer stepped out, notepad in hand, and asked calmly, "Sir, can you explain what happened here?" His tone wasn't accusatory. It was measured, waiting. My neighbors leaned forward, cameras still recording. Karen sniffled and clutched her robe like some courtroom victim. I took a breath and laid it all out. Karen parked in my private driveway. She left a note saying she did it on purpose. I removed the vehicle with my tractor and placed it safely in the ditch. I didn't damage it. I didn't touch her. I didn't even raise my voice. I just solved the problem she created. The officer tilted his head. "Do you have this note?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded piece of paper. Karen's handwriting glared back at everyone. "You don't use this driveway enough, so I'm borrowing it today. Deal with it." The officer raised his eyebrows. My neighbors broke into laughter. Karen lunged forward, shrieking, "That's not what I wrote." He forged it. But it was too late. The truth was right there in ink. Greg tried to step in, desperate to salvage the HOA's authority. "Officer, even if that's true, surely using a tractor was excessive. We can handle this internally." But the cop shook his head. "This is private property." She trespassed and blocked his driveway. Frankly, he showed restraint. Most people would have called a tow truck, but this... He glanced at the SUV half buried in mud. "This is creative, not criminal." The cul-de-sac exploded with laughter. Even the officer cracked a smile before regaining his composure. Karen's face turned crimson. "You're all against me. This whole neighborhood is ungrateful. I am the HOA." And that was it, the breaking point. A neighbor shouted, "Not anymore, you're not." Another joined in. "Yeah, resign already." Karen. Soon the chant spread, voices rising until the entire crowd was shouting. Her authority, her smugness, her so-called power, it all crumbled right there in the street. The officer handed the note back to me, gave a respectful nod, and said, "You're free to go about your day, sir." Then he turned to Karen, who was still ranting incoherently. "Ma'am, I suggest you get a tow truck and calm down before you cause more trouble." And just like that, it was over. Her SUV sat there until evening, when a tow truck finally dragged it out of the ditch like a defeated beast. But the real damage wasn't to her car, it was to her reign. From that day on, Karen never blocked my driveway again. The neighbors saw her for what she was, and her stranglehold on the community snapped in half. And me, I went back inside, picked up my coffee, and took a sip. It was cold by then, but it tasted like victory. Sometimes, standing your ground doesn't just clear your driveway, it clears the way for justice.